tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We all agree that now is just not the time to be flying.
Flights to the sun suspended. Tough new quarantine rules. Will it be enough to keep COVID-fatigued Canadians at home? Also,
of course, this is disappointing for all of us.
Immunizations interrupted. Another delay in the delivery of COVID-19 vaccine to BC. And
is this flirting or is this not flirting? What are your intentions behind these things that you're saying to me?
Eastside Boxing Club was their safe space. What several women say drove them out.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us.
hoping to take off sometime soon for a winter or spring getaway, while Canada's airlines and the federal government are doing their best to keep you grounded.
Air Canada, WestJet, Sunwing, and Air Transat are canceling air service to all Caribbean destinations and Mexico starting this Sunday up until April 30th. We're doing this to keep as many Canadians alive and healthy as we can through this pandemic.
As part of new travel rules, Ottawa plans to introduce mandatory PCR tests for all arriving international passengers at the airport. That's in addition to pre-boarding negative tests while abroad. Travelers will then need to wait for the lab results, maybe up to 3 days in an approved hotel at their own expense.
Anyone showing a negative test can complete their 14-day quarantine at home with enhanced oversight. Those testing positive will have to quarantine at a designated government facility to ensure they're not bringing any new variants into the country. Ottawa also plans on rolling out new testing requirements for those entering Canada by land.
Travelers seeking entry at Canada's land ports of entry will be required to provide proof of a negative molecular test result. Exemptions are in place for workers who are critical to our economy, our infrastructure, and our safety.
Public Safety Minister Bill Blair says fewer than 2% of COVID-19 cases have been linked to any form of travel. A smaller portion of that number is connected to international trips.
And officials here in BC are welcoming the news from the federal government.
Susanna De Silva joins us now live. Susanna, what did Dr. Bonnie Henry have to say about the new rules?
Well, she was very happy to hear them. She says they are very important for British Columbia and very important that they happen right now.
That's fabulous. It's going to protect us in this very critical few months where we don't yet have enough people protected from this virus. And we have the concern about importation of different strains. So the fewer transmission events that we have in the world, but also in Canada and in BC, the less chance there is for the virus to mutate.
Now, she was asked about other destinations besides Mexico and the Caribbean, U.S. destinations, for instance, like Hawaii, that are very popular with British Columbians. She says the federal government is talking to the United States about updating and revising their border measures. She does expect some news coming from that in the coming days. Now, she was asked also about travel within the BC and about spring break, of course, that is on a lot of people's mind, and saying likely that is going to be recommended to stay home during spring break, that things could improve and the situation could get better depending on vaccinations, for instance, but that will not become clear until probably the end of February into March. They do say that, she said, you know, day trips to places like local ski hills are not the issue. The issue is when people go and stay places, the gathering afterwards, after you do the skiing. They did mention the stepping up of enforcement around rental properties as well, but that likely spring break is going to be spent at home. But again, gave some hope that perhaps in the summer we could see some travel within the province. But again, it all depends on the evolving situation.
Okay, as for the situation in the province right now, Susie, where are we seeing the hot spots?
Well, she says we continue to see clusters and outbreaks related to small gatherings in places like Williams Lake, in places like Fernie, Whistler, where people are getting together in small groups. She also said that about 30 to 40% of cases are coming from workplaces, not in workplaces where they meet with the public, but between staff in places like break rooms, and that they are looking at stepping up enforcement in those situations as well. Now, there were calls all this week for more detailed data like that about where exactly the transmission has been happening, but she says it is a complicated issue.
We are continuing to see clusters, small numbers of people that are transmitting, and then it spills over into the workplace. It spills over into a long-term care home. So it's really challenging to try and say it's exactly this or it's exactly that. These are all interconnected and interrelated.
Now, she says they are also focusing on hotspots with vaccinations. There was a clinic down on the downtown east side today because of outbreaks seen at shelters there and out of St. Paul's Hospital. And so that's where they are focusing their vaccinations right now because of course, the limited supply that we are seeing both from Pfizer and Moderna. So that's where they are focused on. But they have been able to get into all of the long-term care facilities in the province. And they say as far as residents who were offered the vaccine, they are seeing that a majority of them, a very high percentage, have taken the vaccine.
All right, Susanna De Silva reporting tonight. Thanks. And news of the travel restrictions comes as BC's numbers continue to show slow decline. And sadly, another 5 people have died from COVID-19, bringing our province's death toll to 1,189. 514 more people have tested positive today. That makes our total number of cases exceeding 66,000. There are 292 people in hospital, 74 of them in critical or intensive care. Just over 4,400 are active cases. And over 7,200 people are under active public health monitoring. Over 129,000 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine have been administered. That's just over 3% of those are second doses.
Meanwhile, more and more outbreaks in long-term care facilities are being resolved. The Centre for Disease Control says 19 active outbreaks were declared over this week, with just 1 new outbreak declared. That's at the Glenwood Seniors Community in Agassiz, where 2 cases were reported. As well, the BC CDC says there are currently no active outbreaks in BC's independent living facilities.
Okay, back to those new travel restrictions. The new rules come with significant costs for travelers that include extra testing and hotel quarantines.
As Eva Ugwensenge reports, the new rules sparked a mixed reaction from health authorities and the travel industry here in BC.
I'm pretty much like putting the nail in the coffin because right now, I mean, like I said, we have no business at all. Like any hope of us keeping the business going, just now it looks really impossible.
For travel agents, it's another blow after nearly a year where revenues all but disappeared. Canada's main airlines have agreed to cancel service to the Caribbean and Mexico until the end of April. But flights can continue to other popular sun destinations like Hawaii.
The safe zones are in Caribbean, places like that were very, like 0 to none cases of the virus. And while people that are going from Canada, they're able to provide the test that they have negative tests. So which makes sense. Go that route instead of like making a blanket no to everyone.
Returning travelers will also have to pay for a 3-night stay at a hotel while they wait for COVID test results. A search of Vancouver airport hotels shows that could cost several $100s before taxes. The government says along with the cost of the test, Canadians should be prepared to pay more than $2,000 once they return from travel.
When they have to come back, they have to face such strict measures. I think that's just going to deter them. There was hope for people to travel to more into Hawaii or going to Dominican or places like that. But now these people coming back with all these strict measures, well, that's just going to make it tough.
Unfortunately, there are many Canadians who will travel come hell or high water. And the government's finally realized that you have to hurt them in their pocketbooks to do this.
The Vancouver airport says it's working closely with the government to bring in mandatory testing and quarantine. But while the Prime Minister said new measures will be in place as soon as possible, airports don't yet know the details on how it will be implemented. Eva Ugwensenge, CBC News, Vancouver.
Another setback today for BC and Canada's vaccine plans. Next month, expected shipments of the Moderna vaccine are being cut by 20 to 25%.
Yeah, so for next week alone, that means 50,000 fewer doses. Other countries face similar rationing as Moderna attends to a problem with its manufacturing process.
Greg Rasmussen shows us why that's little comfort to the provinces.
Do you want me to warn you or just poke you without telling you?
In Manitoba, a rare bit of good news on the vaccination front as the last of those living in long-term care receive their first shot. The bad news, a reduction in doses coming from Moderna in the weeks ahead.
It's obviously very disappointing, but this is what we're ready for. We know that vaccine supply chains are unpredictable.
Moderna says it will fall short by up to 120,000 doses by the end of February. Pfizer had already reduced deliveries, with both companies blaming delays at their production facilities.
It is concerning.
Ontario's premier is urging Ottawa to speed up its approval of other vaccines to help fill the gap.
I am asking and I'm pleading and begging Health Canada, please get AstraZeneca approved.
In Alberta, the government says 6,000 healthcare workers and seniors will be getting the shot later than expected.
The news from Ottawa is going from bad to worse. The reality is our plans depend on the supply that we receive from the federal government, and the numbers are changing every day.
In BC, available supplies will continue to target those most vulnerable.
We are working with what we have available to best address those most at risk and those hotspots and outbreaks that are happening in communities.
Also vaccinate as many people as you can.
The failure to deliver as promised is raising serious questions about the companies involved.
I don't know if we can trust what they say. We will send in 1 month or 3 weeks, and we don't know. Definitely we need more vaccines from different suppliers.
There's not a lot of people that like needles.
One thing being watched closely, these delays could further lengthen the time between the first and second vaccinations. Experts say they're learning more every day about the impact of delaying that follow-up shot. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Vancouver.
Allegations tonight that a pregnant Haisla woman lost her baby when she didn't receive adequate care, in part because she's Indigenous.
It happened at a northern BC hospital. The health minister announced a review of the allegations this afternoon. Our Dan Burt joins us now live with more. Dan, what happened to this woman?
Well, a man named Dustin Gaucher tells CBC News his pregnant niece visited Kitimat General Hospital on Wednesday night in distress. He says she was 2 weeks overdue and wanted to be induced so she could give birth. But Gaucher claims the doctor said no. He says his niece called an ambulance to try to be transferred to a larger hospital in Terrace, but was just driven to a different entrance at Kitimat Hospital. Her father then drove her to Terrace, 60 kilometers away, where she went into labor and gave birth to a stillborn baby. Emergency Health Services says paramedics did get a call for a maternity patient outside Kitimat General on Wednesday evening, but didn't transport anyone and won't say why. Gaucher says there are many stories in the community of Haisla and other Indigenous people not receiving proper care. He says they are deemed difficult and cannot get help. Health officials won't confirm or comment on the specifics in this case, citing privacy. But as you said, Adrian Dick says it will be reviewed.
There is no place for racism in our healthcare system, and any discriminatory or racist behavior is a violation of our principles, policies, and values. Northern Health has initiated a review which will work with the family and the healthcare providers to determine exactly what happened in the situation.
Last November, an investigation by BC's former child watchdog, Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond, found racism, stereotyping, and discrimination against Indigenous people in BC's healthcare system are widespread. Dustin Gaucher says he wants cultural liaisons in Kitimat Hospital to work with Indigenous patients. For its part, Northern Health says Kitimat General is equipped for maternal care, including emergency C-sections. Though more medically complicated cases may be referred to other hospitals, it says the vast majority of its staff provide culturally safe care every day, but no, there is more work to be done. Tina, Mike.
Thanks so much, Dan. That is our Dan Burt reporting live for us tonight. Well, for years, the Eastside Boxing Club has offered programs for women, at-risk youth, and workers on the downtown east side.
But in the past few months, several women have come forward with concerning allegations.
As Marie Zeiler reports, they say their complaints were then dismissed.
As a former pro boxer, Jamie Ward-Yassine isn't afraid of a good fight, but she never thought she'd have to duke it out at the one place in the boxing world that she thought of as her sanctuary.
The real issue at hand is the mistreatment and harassment of staff and members, the majority female, at the gym.
For 3 years, she worked at Eastside Boxing, a non-profit gym that offers programs for vulnerable women and youth. But her involvement with the gym came to an abrupt end this fall after she supported several women who came forward with complaints, most of them against Dave Schuck, her ex-husband and the organization's executive director.
When he's in a mood that he can't control his emotions, he'll explode.
This former staff member quit nearly a year ago. CBC News has agreed to withhold her name.
Upon starting work, it was a joke how you would just have to be able to handle Dave's outbursts.
When Muriel left, she told board members it was because of Schuck's bullying.
I still believe in the power of the programs that they're holding there, the youth program and the women's program. And I'm rooting for their success because I really care about those people. But it's difficult to see that success happen when I witness such oppressive behavior, almost abusive, from this individual.
The board conducted an internal investigation to look into the allegations. The results were included in a 31-page document the club issued in response to CBC's questions. The investigation concluded that the women who came forward did so in order to destroy Eastside Boxing and further their own interests. The club says Muriel quit after Schuck criticized her poor work performance. As for Ward Yassine, the club accuses her of giving herself an unauthorized raise and trying to take over the gym. The document also included nearly 50 statements from men and women in support of Schuck and Eastside Boxing.
This is what I got when I started coaching.
But the complainants say the internal investigation was biased. Boxer and coach Kat Accardi came forward after her male coach made her feel uncomfortable.
They were very little things, but they were of a flirtatious manner that I had to question, is this flirting or is this not flirting? What are your intentions behind these things that you're saying to me?
Accardi says her concerns were immediately dismissed.
My reality has never been validated. My reality has never been taken into consideration as like this could be a grain of truth. This is another side of the perspective. This is another side of the story.
That's a really big accusation. Ward Yassine has another reason why her and the other complainants feel dismissed.
Honestly, most people just kind of are like, it's boxing, what are we gonna do? And I think now with all of these, movements and all of this awareness and all of this relearning happening, we are standing up going, no, this isn't right, this isn't okay.
Marie Seidler, CBC News, Vancouver.
Gang violence in the Metro Vancouver area is on the rise. 6 shootings in less than 2 months.
Among the victims, a 14-year-old boy. The CBC's Briar Stewart looks at what is happening and how one former gang member is trying to help.
It was another early morning murder investigation right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Security video taken by a neighbor showed a truck drive through Tuesday night. Then moments later, this.
This has all the hallmarks of a targeted hit.
It was the 6th murder since Christmas that police believe has been connected to gang violence.
This shouldn't be going on. There's lots of families that live in that building behind there, It's amazing something else didn't happen, right?
Police say all of the victims were known to them, including DeKel Willis, just 14 years old, gunned down while getting out of a cab.
It's absolutely disturbing.
Detective Cal Dusange works in financial crimes now, but spent years investigating gangs. He believes part of what's fueling the current surge of violence is the murder of a high-profile gang member back on January 6th.
There will always be power vacuums and imbalances with respect to a lot of these gangs that are fighting each other for territory and for power. At the end of the day, the entire game is about money. And so they get drawn into this lifestyle.
Which is why Dusange launched a foundation to help keep kids out of gangs. One of the volunteers, Shane Knox.
It's my turn to give back as I created so much chaos.
That's him when he was part of the United Nations gang, a notorious group that trades in drugs and guns. He was drawn in because he was looking to belong.
The only solution really, like, just give these gangsters, throw the books at them, show up to their families and stuff like that, and you know, their family would have more of an influence and to be able to talk to them.
Knox, who went to jail for trafficking, said it was only after he was released that he was able to make a clean break from that lifestyle. A decade on, he works in the trades and has found a new purpose with the new family. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
Mungwan Jo won't be having her bail conditions loosened anytime soon. A judge deciding her current restrictions are the minimum required to keep her from fleeing Canada. The Huawei executive applied to leave her Vancouver home outside her curfew and without the presence of security. Her husband testified underlying health conditions put her at risk of getting COVID from her security detail. In his ruling, Judge William Urquhart says Mung shows no health issues and has no need to leave home except for court appearances. The Crown argued Mung has the motivation and resources to flee Canada before her extradition hearings, which begin in March.
A human rights complaint filed by a Black student and her mother against the Vancouver School Board reached a settlement today. The details have not been disclosed, but the student, Changish Baboth, received an award of courage today for speaking up. 2 years ago, an anti-Black racist video circulated the halls of Lord Byng Secondary, resulting in 2 Black students transferring out of the school. But the Vancouver School Board has been criticized for not doing enough and is facing pressure from advocates to implement greater changes. Baboth, who was in grade 10 at the time, was the first to speak up. Today, the advocacy group Speak Up Youth Forums gave her an award for her bravery, but she says she's glad to move on from the experience.
Terrible. I would not want anyone to ever go through what I went through.
On top of her award, Baboth will also take up an internship with the organization Justice for Girls. Well, a BC man will receive compensation of almost $1 million from the province. This comes after a BC Human Rights Tribunal decision found the former corrections officer was targeted on the job for being Black. Levan Francis worked for BC Corrections for 15 years until he quit in 2013. During his time, Francis was the target of repeated racial slurs and physical attacks at work at the North Fraser Pretrial Center in Port Coquitlam. After filing his complaint, Francis faced attacks and was labeled a lazy Black man, despite an excellent work record. And the complaint process cost him his family home and his mental health. The tribunal agreed that Francis' mental health illness worsened by the events, and now BC must pay him $964 million plus interest. Well, the union representing Canada Line workers has issued a 72-hour strike notice to ProTrans BC, the operator of the SkyTrain line. The BC Government and Service Employees Union represents around 180 workers at the Canada Line who have been without a contract since the end of 2019. In November, workers voted 98% in favor of strike action. They're asking for wage parity with other SkyTrain employees, improved sick leave, and contract length. The union has a meeting planned with ProTrans on Sunday. If a deal isn't reached by then, some of the form of job action is expected Monday afternoon. The Expo and Millennium lines, which are run by a different company, would not be affected.
Johanna Wagstaffe here now with our first check of the forecast. Friday turned out to be pretty good, but of course the weekend is here now.
Don't you just love it when the impending Pacific systems line up for our weekends? Yeah, that's what we've got going on. In fact, showers just getting ready to cross the strait right now. We will find some breaks over the next couple of days, but probably wise to gear up for a wet weekend. Let me show you what the temperatures look like right now out there. We are getting into a milder pattern as well. 6 right now at YVR. This time yesterday we were at a 4 or 5, so some warmer air moving in ahead of that cold front. We always get the warmest push before a cold front rolls through, but the cold front won't actually drop temperatures too much. You can see we are getting some snow, higher elevations on the island right now. Not expected to see that anywhere close to sea level overnight tonight, but our mountains definitely going to get some snow as this system crosses the strait. This is coming to us from a low that's actually centered up towards Haida Gwaii. That's the system for Saturday. As we head into Sunday, that's a whole other can of worms, as they say. So I will take you through the Sunday forecast and try and find some sunshine in there. I know I can.
Please try. We'd really like it.
I
Thanks,
will.
Jill. I'll talk again in a bit. Okay, Lunar New Year is a couple of weeks away, but this year, like every other holiday, it promises to be a whole lot quieter.
But a new Westminster mother is hoping to generate some memories for her kids, and she's enlisted her neighbors to help.
As Megan Batchelor reports, the mom hopes the initiative makes others feel more included in the community.
No dragon dances, no gatherings, no parades. Lunar New Year this year will be celebrated very differently. But one new Westminster mother is determined to keep this year's celebration magical. Elaine Sue realized when Christmas was over, her son Ellis likely wouldn't see the same amount of decoration for Lunar New Year, a celebration that is a part of their heritage.
Generally, in non-COVID times, we gather with a lot of people in the Chinese community, and obviously we can't do that this year. But I think even in an ordinary year, this is a really great way to have that spread, and for at least for my kids to realize, hey, the thing I'm excited about, that my family is excited about, is totally commonplace, and it's just as much a part of the fabric of our community as Christmas and as Halloween. And there's nothing other about it. Look.
That was the inspiration behind asking 150 of her closest neighbors to consider using decorations supplied by her to adorn their houses. The response was overwhelming.
Yeah, we just wanted to be supportive, and why not sort of share in some of that festivity for people that are celebrating.
My dad's actually half Chinese, so I'm technically a quarter. And so we did celebrate it a little bit when we were younger, but we kind of haven't in the past 2 years. So it was kind of a way to re-spark the tradition.
Nearly 70 homes in this new Westminster neighborhood now feature splashes of red, wishes of good fortune, and lanterns. Sue and her family love taking in the celebratory sights, and they're not alone.
I've had a lot of comments from them, a lot of texts, a lot of phone calls, a lot of people stopping us on the street and just saying, you know, Lunar New Year is not something our family celebrates, but thank you for bringing the community together, which is kind of an unintended, I didn't really see this coming.
With 2 weeks to go until marking the Year of the Ox, Sue encourages more people to celebrate the holiday, even if they don't normally. It might help a neighbor feel more included during these isolating times. Megan Batchelor, CBC News, New Westminster.
Nice to see the community coming together there, for sure. Okay, perhaps you are already, but just a reminder, you can also watch our newscasts live on CBC Gem.
You can also find CBC Vancouver on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
In what's shaping up as a global battle over vaccines, Europe threatens to block exports, putting Canada's supply and BC's at risk. But why Brussels' vaccine rollout may be one of its own making? Next. And thanks for staying with us tonight during our commercial-free live stream. Well, cancer nearly took the life of a 3-year-old PEI boy after he was diagnosed last May, but it's now in remission.
And he's learning to live life completely blind. But as Wayne Thibodeau reports, that's not stopping him from enjoying life to the absolute fullest.
To watch Jake playing with his older brother William, it's hard to tell anything is wrong.
Go again. What is this?
But Jake walks gingerly through the park, his big brother always by his side, holding his hand, guiding him through the maze of slides, swings, and walking bridges. Doctors diagnosed Jake last May, on Mother's Day, with Burkitt's lymphoma, a rare and rapidly growing cancer that most often strikes children and young adults. Jake's cancer is now in remission, but doctors told the Kislingbury family his tumor crushed his optic nerve. His mom says Jake sees nothing at all. He will never see again.
To go through a cancer treatment, the chemotherapy, and be taken away from your family and your friends and everything that is familiar to you would be hard, but to do it suddenly with no eyesight it's pretty remarkable that he was still able to smile and giggle, and he gave me a lot of strength going through this.
Jake is more interested in talking about his birthday party next week than his battle with what he calls the yucky bugs.
And I'm gonna be 4.
Jake spent nearly 6 months in a Halifax hospital. While there, Kinsling-Bury would tell her son doctors were giving him a special medicine that, like superheroes, would help him fight the cancer.
He has such an incredible personality that he just wants to get on and play and be Jake. And he's not going to let anything stop that.
But his mom does worry. What does the future hold for her little boy? What challenges will he face growing up blind?
Hello, bye-bye. Hello, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Jake is already learning Braille, and his family has connected with specialized teachers to give him the skills he'll need.
No limitations because of the vision. They would develop strategies and build their skill comparable to everyone else. The difference is I would use my vision, they would use other senses to build their skill.
Kinsling-Bury says she only has to look at the support her family has received from across Prince Edward Island to know her boy is going to be okay.
We have moments where it's bad and moments where it's good, but knowing at the end of the day that we still get to love him and cuddle him and kiss him and hear him laugh, that's the best medicine.
Wayne Thibodeau, CBC News, Cornwall.
Take a picture? I think they got lots of...
Nice to see that. A pretty strong recovery for sure. Okay, lots more to come on the vaccine rollout, national and international news. But for now, enjoy the view, I think, of downtown Vancouver. Yes, it is. It's downtown Vancouver.
Moderna says it's shipping about 20% fewer vaccines to Canada in the next month. That, along with cuts in deliveries of the Pfizer vaccine, poses a serious setback for our country's immunization plan.
Some European countries are also facing delays, and EU officials are blaming its rollout problems on the ongoing lack of supply.
But as Renee Filipponi reports, some say it has to do with a severe lack of planning.
Rolling through the French countryside, vaccines are coming to the elderly. This man says he tried to book an appointment in town, but they were out of vaccines. Shortages are a big issue here and across the continent. The president of the Grand Reims metropolitan area says they have the ability to vaccinate 1,000 people a day, but are getting just 1,200 vaccines a week. The German government is preparing for 10 weeks of shortages, and many other countries are scaling back their rollout plans. The frustration has led to a fight with UK's Swedish drug maker AstraZeneca. The company says it can't fulfill its EU order right now because of manufacturing problems. The EU sent investigators into the Belgian plant and even published the contract with the drug company to show they had a binding order. Today, the EU announced it will not only track the export of vaccines produced in Europe, but put controls on them too.
The aim is to provide us immediately with full transparency. Transparency that until now has been lacking.
The EU had not been prepared institutionally.
This economist says the blame lies with Europe, and that while the UK and US signed major contracts early, it waited.
Some countries in Europe didn't want to take the risk and didn't understand that not taking the risk would even be riskier because it prolongs the pandemic and increases the deaths in Europe.
At a hospital in Madrid, the remaining vaccine doses are given to staff in need of a second shot. The shortage is so serious here, they have stopped vaccinating new people. No one is getting a first dose. It's a major blow, says the doctor in charge, who says many of the staff are now left at the mercy of the pandemic. Unsure when the vaccines will bring any relief. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
And with those current supply lines looking shaky, we thought you'd want to know about the next vaccines coming down the pipe for possible approval here in Canada.
The CBC's Christine Birak shows us why those new vaccines may be better at fighting off those variants of COVID-19.
At 66%, its efficacy isn't as eye-popping as its rivals, but Johnson & Johnson's vaccine requires just one shot. It's easy to ship and stores in a regular fridge.
There's no question that this vaccine is going to be a game changer.
In a press release, the company says its vaccine did keep people out of hospital, noting the shot was 85% effective overall in preventing severe disease. And that number held up across geographies, ages, and multiple virus variants, including one identified in South Africa.
So they have a good sense of the real-world efficacy of this vaccine, and it certainly looks very promising for a single dose.
Some doctors point out Pfizer and Moderna's vaccine trials were done earlier in the pandemic and before variant strains of the virus had even emerged.
You test those vaccines now, for example, in South Africa or Brazil or other areas that have these resistant variants, you might well find that they're actually down around 65% as well. At this stage, we just don't know.
Another vaccine approaching the finish line is Novavax. The company announced its two-shot vaccine showed an overall efficacy of just over 89% in the UK, even with the variant. But in South Africa, that variant pulled the efficacy down around 50%.
It's going to be like the flu for a short while, that we might need to get new vaccinations with the variants that are circulating.
Canada's top doctor says initial approvals for Novavax or Johnson & Johnson's vaccine will take time.
Like all vaccines, we have to actually get that data reviewed.
As tensions grow over vaccine shortages, today the European Union approved Oxford AstraZeneca's vaccine. Health Canada says it's currently completing its data review and expects to make a decision on AstraZeneca in the coming days. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
Yesterday marked the first anniversary of COVID being detected here in British Columbia. So as we enter our second year of our COVID reality, how are people feeling? Tired, fatigued, hopeful? We hit the streets to find out. That's next.
The government of Iran is allowing Ayatollah Khomeini to return from exile. His dramatic homecoming is expected on Thursday. Khomeini wants to get rid of the Shah-appointed government of Shapur Bakhtiar, but there's increasing speculation in Iran that the army will not allow that. The threat of civil war is worrying foreign residents. Several plane loads of foreign workers left Iran today, taking advantage of the reopening of Tehran airport. The United States has ordered all non-essential personnel to leave. Canada airlifted most of its citizens out a month ago, but 140 non-embassy personnel decided to stay. Joe Schlesinger found some of them and asked them why.
The Tehran office of Halls Niblock, a Vancouver firm of consulting engineers. Over the past dozen years, Halls Niblock did so well in Iran that the Tehran tail was all but wagging the Vancouver dog, but no more. When you come to Halls Niblock in Tehran these days, it's a sad and empty place. Of the 25 Canadian engineers who worked here, only 7 are left. The rest were evacuated, and so were the families of those who stayed behind. There's often no heat and no light.
What about the loans?
But above all, there's no more money. Like other Canadian firms in Iran, Halls Niblock is feeling the consequences of the unrest and economic paralysis in the country. Past bills are slow in being paid, and the prospect of future business has dimmed. So the companies are just hanging on, like gamblers trying to ride out a losing streak. But what about the men who represent them here? Why are they staying?
I like Iran. I have a job to do, and I also feel that there isn't that much danger, that one can stay out of danger by being close to what's going on. In the family situation, it's a much different situation. You get wives who became afraid to go out at one point, and then later when there was no gasoline, weren't able to go out. And the children were on their hands because the schools were closed, and they've left for that reason.
4-year-old Carol Diamond is among those who left. So did her mother and her sister Debbie. Her father, Andy Diamond, a telecommunications engineer, is now here all alone. The Diamond family stayed together in Tehran through the worst of it, when there was shooting just down the street, when foreigners were being threatened, when there were tanks all over. When Pat Diamond finally did leave with the children in mid-January, it was not so much because she and her husband thought it was all that dangerous to stay, but because of outside pressures, advice from the Canadian Embassy, and pleading from their worried families back home. So what made Andy Diamond stay behind?
Two things, I suppose. One is my commitment to the business here. Our company really depends on Iran. I'm challenged by the project, and I still see a future for it. And I'd like to stay on. I've been requested to stay on by the Iranians. And also personal reasons. We have good, significant relationships with Persians that I'd like to stay on and keep those.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We are working with what we have available to best address those most at risk and those hotspots and outbreaks that are happening in communities around the province.
The COVID-19 vaccine supply in BC continues to be a challenge. Health officials have been told the Moderna vaccine supply is being reduced by 20% for the next 2 weeks. That's because of processing plant issues. Earlier, Pfizer said it is reducing the number of doses at BC for the next 2 weeks.
BC health officials are reporting 514 new cases of COVID-19 and 5 more deaths. A total of 292 people are in hospital, with 74 in intensive care. Dr. Bonnie Henry says all residents and caregivers at long-term care facilities have now been offered a vaccine. Well, nationally, case numbers are falling, as are hospitalizations. Canada, however, needs more vaccine, and there has been yet another delay in shipments.
Yes, while immunization slows, officials fear virus variants at home are picking up speed. And as the danger from variants may be growing from abroad, curbing non-essential travel is a new priority.
As David Cochran shows us, Ottawa is making it even harder to take flight.
For weeks, he's been warning Canadians not to travel because the rules could change with little notice. Turns out he wasn't bluffing.
In the coming weeks, we will be introducing mandatory PCR testing at the airport for people returning to Canada.
A mandatory test on arrival in addition to the pre-departure test required to fly home, followed by new quarantine measures that carry a big price tag.
Travelers will then have to wait for up to 3 days at an approved hotel for their test results at their own expense, which is expected to be more than $2,000.
It's a COVID all-inclusive, a bundle of inconvenience and deterrence stacked on top of existing restrictions, designed to keep people home in the cold Canadian winter.
What we're trying very hard to do here is eliminate all discretionary, non-essential travel.
So starting next week, all international flights, including those from the U.S., can only land at 4 airports: Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal, which funnels travelers into major centers for the new testing and quarantine measures. There's also a warning that Canadians coming home by land will eventually face more restrictions, including a negative test to cross the border.
We urge you to cancel any plans to leave Canada in the near future, including for spring break.
It goes beyond urging. Air Canada, WestJet, Sunwing, Air Transat have all agreed to cancel flights to Mexico and the Caribbean from Sunday to April 30th, limiting vacations as COVID variants spread.
I think that this could actually be quite effective at keeping out much more of the new variants. And if we keep out many cases of the variants, then we will do way better in the long run.
The Prime Minister says all of these measures should be in force within the next few weeks. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
And for those of us in BC, we are now beginning the 2nd year of the pandemic. The first case of COVID-19 was announced exactly a year ago yesterday.
It's been a long, exhausting journey, so we ventured out to see how people are feeling and what they expect the next year will bring. Let's go. Year 2 of the pandemic in BC begins. They say it's like running a marathon and the last leg is the hardest. And a lot of people are tired.
Oh, so over it. I'm tired of it. What can you say?
Who can blame them? It's been a year of ups and downs, of constant change and adjustment, of lockdowns and restrictions.
I miss going to school like normally because I only go to school for like 2 hours. And I miss like having sleepovers with my friends and hanging out with like big groups.
While some say tougher restrictions early on would have been better.
Made us quarantine again for 2 weeks and let us live free, like New Zealand, the Caribbeans, the Bermuda.
Meanwhile, businesses have suffered major losses and families have lost loved ones. But there have been little joys too.
She's on mat leave and we're in a bubble and we hang out almost every day and go for walks, so that part I cherish.
And life lessons to carry forward.
Oh, I think we're all learning to live a little quieter, which has got some nice moments to it, but I'm sick to death of my screens. And my body doesn't like that either.
Yep, there's been a lot of that. Universities offering lectures online and the words "you're on mute" a constant. But not everyone minds. And across the board, there is one thing everyone's looking forward to.
I miss being on airplanes.
For some, the countdown is on.
Hopefully it's gone by summer so we can get out and enjoy it.
While others know not to look too far ahead.
I try not to put the timelines on it because then you're just kind of setting yourself up for feeling a certain way. So just kind of, one foot in front of the other while keeping hope alive.
Hopeful that, like many people, they'll only run a marathon once in their lifetime.
It's been an experience I wouldn't want to go through again, though.
Crossing the pandemic finish line and not looking back. Tina Lovgreen, CBC News, Vancouver.
That guy's a pretty fast runner.
Very fast.
I must say, yeah. You talk to a lot of people today. Travel's one of the big things, but is there some optimism out there as well?
You know what, surprisingly, a lot of people were positive. They were looking for the silver lining. They were looking at all the things they've learned this year. I mean, no beating around the bush. People were tired of the pandemic and restrictions, but overall, they weren't as depressed or upset. They were looking for the positives. They really were trying to hold on to it. And the number one thing everyone's looking forward to is to get on an airplane and to travel. That 100%, that was every single person's answer, looking forward to getting on a plane.
All right. Thanks, Tina.
It is 6:45 and a live look at Revelstoke, where it's about -1 right now in that city and plenty of snow on the ground. Precipitation for the lower mainland this weekend, but nope, it's not snow, it's rain. Johanna tells us how much and for how long next.
Market Report is brought to you by Fortis BC. We've got even bigger rebates.
Rebate.
Whoa! On select high-efficiency equipment for business, but only for a limited time.
A CBC News exclusive tonight. When the big banks say no, alternative lenders are there to offer cash when you need it and quick.
Marketplace's latest hidden camera investigation uncovers high interest rates and questionable sales tactics that are costing Canadians.
Charles C. Agro now with more on the fight to protect Canadians' cash.
Is it fair to call the backyard of your house a money pit?
Yes, for sure.
Like so many renovations, the work on Teresa Morton's home did not go as planned.
This whole back of the house to here all had to come off.
A $68,000 quote quickly became a $175,000 ordeal. When the bank said no, she turned to Fairstone Financial, an alternative lender.
The interest that they charged us was 27.99%.
At that rate, the $20,000 Teresa borrowed would cost her another $17,000 in interest over 5 years. To find out just how high interest rates can get and how well they're explained, we sent a marketplace tester undercover to some popular alternative lenders.
So what's the interest?
3.94.
Sorry, 3.94 for a year?
No, like monthly.
In my opinion, they're all misleading numbers.
Numbers and sales tactics that don't add up, according to mortgage specialist Alex Hadataji.
Most of our customers do get, unfortunately, 46.9.
46%?
Yeah.
Full time. So 3 years would cost 46 or each year?
Exactly, 46 for the full 3 years.
Okay, so not each year.
No, that would be killer.
Uneducated, untrained sales professional that either doesn't know what it's talking about or misleading the client completely.
When I hear that she is expected to pay 46.9% over 3 years.
Absolutely.
Is that how interest works?
No, it doesn't. It's an annual interest rate that you charge. If it's 46%, every year you charge them 46%.
Money Mart says its employee was not trying to mislead our tester, but admits the interest explanation could have been handled better. Cash Money tells us it proudly offers credit to underbanked consumers. And Fairstone Financial says it charges high interest rates because its clients are risky and may default on their loans. Teresa Morton paid off her loan early, but worries about others. Charles C. Agro, CBC News, Toronto.
And for the full results of Marketplace's hidden camera investigation, tune in to The Truth About High Interest Loans tonight at 8 o'clock.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. Talk about TGIF and what's in store for us this weekend.
Yeah, no kidding. Just as I left you earlier in the show, the raindrops started to fall. So it is now showering across most of Metro Vancouver. Take a look at the radar right now. We're going to continue to see bands sweep in. Just really light right now. Bowen Island also, you can see that little cell crossing up into the inlet. Just really light stuff right now across the mainland. Over towards the island, you can see we're actually getting some snow, as I mentioned earlier, for higher elevations. So far, this is lining up pretty good with our high-res short-term model. So taking you through the overnight, expected to see more showers fill in after midnight. A showery start to your Saturday, and there will be snow for the mountains. Snow levels are still low enough that we will see some good mountain snow, but it's not an all-day event. We'll continue to get that westerly flow, bringing showers in through the day, but again, not a washout. I think it's more of a bookended wet day until we get to Sunday. Then a bigger system will roll in from the west. You can see that crossing for early Sunday morning. More widespread rain, heavy at times, especially through the first half of your Sunday. Both of these systems coming with some gusty winds as well. You can see the first low tracking up towards Haida Gwaii. That second one sort of spins off our coast through to Monday, so I've got to keep the showers in to kick off early next week as well. Still seeing some sunshine across the interior for tomorrow. The sunshine we saw through central and northern coastal sections is gone. You've got that storm track now for you. Just wanted to show you the temperatures in the interior as they rise. Here's Saturday's afternoon highs as we get into Sunday, getting above seasonal once again. We're looking more like the trends we saw through December and early January. That's kicking back in. It's a fairly mild week for us, especially when you look at those overnight lows. So showery Saturday, wet Sunday, lingering showers through Monday. I do think we'll see some sunshine, though, Monday afternoon at this point, and hoping for some sunshine through next week. And spoiler alert, next weekend looks to get cold enough for snow possibly, but I'm not going to say it yet.
No, don't say
Just
that.
Going to put it out there. Just going to incept it.
Don't say it out loud. Okay. Thanks,
nope.
Joe.
You're welcome.
It is an igloo with an extra special something. Why this snow shelter is so colorful? Next.
Karen Bowes decided to try something a little different to give her fellow hockey parents updates on their team's game on Tuesday night. Because they couldn't live stream and no fans are allowed in the rink to watch games, she decided she would use her phone to try her own play-by-play from the BMO Center.
You can do it with the voiceover with Siri. You just hit the microphone and talk and she converts it into text. And I know she's not always perfect, but I wasn't thinking she would be quite as disastrous as she was.
Bowes was also operating the game clock as well as doing her new play-by-play by text role. These screen grabs show Surrey and Bowes weren't exactly on the same page. At one point, the Cole Harbour team was taking the pup for a run instead of the puck, and the word puck turned into an F-bomb on multiple occasions. At one point in the game, Bowes posted an apology when she found out what Surrey was up to.
I didn't realize all the conversion errors that Siri was making until after the fact. When I went around the ice and my safety rep was there, bent over, laughing her head off, telling me her husband had called because of my messages.
Most of the parents were in their cars in the parking lot, and the group chat play-by-play was highly entertaining.
My son's name is Sebi. That turned into Debbie and Sobies, and Cole Harbour turned into Pearl Harbor. It was just one thing after another. It was like the hits just kept on coming.
All this profanity, and you will take it as a humor. It's so fun. It's hilarious, and I never had that big laugh for like, oh, we need it in this pandemic, like to laugh like that.
The day after the game, HRM reversed its decision and is now allowing games to be live streamed. But Bowes says she and Surrey will be ready if they're needed again. Paul Palmater, CBC News, Bedford.
My name is Firouz Gawala. I'm a student at UPEI, and I'm in my second year as a psychology major. Well, I'm part of the women's cross-country team at UPEI. So I think we noticed there was no definitive record saying this, but that I might have been the first student athlete who wore a hijab to compete for UPEI and AUS, so Atlantic University sport that wore a hijab for like any kind of sport, I guess. It's a Nike Pro hijab, so it doesn't have any pins or anything like that. It's designed for sports and for running. I guess it's a way for me to represent myself and my religion and who I am and who my family is. I kind of hope that I can be like that role model for other like little kids that like decide to wear a hijab when they're older, because like you don't start out wearing a hijab, you kind of like get to a certain age. And so I hope that if somebody decides to wear it, like if a little girl decides to wear it, that she can feel like she can actually succeed at a sport with wearing it.
All right, in an effort to encourage people to get outside, people in Regina are putting a rather colorful twist on a winter classic.
All you have to do is have lots of pans for freezing lots of bricks of ice, and you just add food coloring to it to the right consistency.
This cold weather construction project is taking place in Regina on the grounds of the RCMP Heritage Center. A grant from the city is helping employees build a colorful igloo, and Mother Nature has been doing her work to freeze the trays of ice to form this structure. Very cool.
Food coloring. You just you don't want to eat it. You know, just stay clear of that. See, we don't get to do these things here.
No.
Build igloos or, well, except up on the mountain. Yeah.
Well, you can always watch our newscast online at cbc.ca/BC.
Yes, our next local news right here at 11 o'clock after the National. Dan Burrett will be here. Have a fantastic weekend.
Good night.